Hello students, welcome to our today lecture. In our today lecture we are going to discuss that how to run a linear regression model in STATA. So basically first of all we have to bring our data from Excel file to STATA file. So I have copied all of my data from Excel. Now we have to go to data editor and we have to paste our data here. And it is asking that do you want to treat the first row as a variable name or data? Yes, we want to treat first row as variable names. So click on this option, treat first row as variable names. So we have to click on this. So now our all data is now present here in STATA file. Now go to statistic, then go to linear model, then go to linear regression. So here it is asking about the dependent variable. So let's say from my these variable I am taking GDPG as my dependent variable. As you can see that GDPG is written here, and I want to take rest of the variables as my independent variable. So here I have mentioned that GDPG is my dependent variable and independent variables are GOV, POPD, GOV. Then click on OK. So here you can see that it has provided us the uh, basic linear regression model result. And here GDPG is the dependent variable, GOV, POPD and GOV are the independent variables. So the number of observations are 29 and we have to explain all of these results one by one. So basically what is the important thing in that table? We have to see the coefficient value of each variable. Then we have to see the probability value of each variable's results. So basically the coefficient sign of the independent variable tell us about the relationship between the dependent variable and independent variable, and the probability value tell us about the significance of the particular variable. So here you can see that here GOV has a negative coefficient, so it means that there is a negative relationship between GOV and GDPG. But in case of POPD it has positive sign, so it means that POPD and GDPG have a positive relationship. So it means that when this variable increases, GDPG also increases. When this variable decreases, GDPG will also decreases. And the probability value tell us the significance. If the probability value is less than 0.05, it means that particular variable have a significant impact on our dependent variable. But in our case, both of these variables are showing insignificant results. Why? Because our probability value is greater than 0.05, which means that these two variables are not showing significant impact on our dependent variable. So what about the t value? We can get the t value by dividing coefficient with standard error. When we divide coefficient with standard error, it will give us this t values. We can also check the significance of any variable by t values. If t value is greater than 2, then it also means that our variable is significant. If t value is less than 2, then it means that our variable is not significant. But in most of the studies, the researcher use the reference of p values. So if the p value is less than 0.05, so it means that your results are significant, and if the p value is greater than 0.05, it means that your results are not significant. So as you can see here in our results, GOV is showing a negative relationship with our dependent variable. So this is only the result of this linear regression model. But for the verification of these results, we have to check that what does the theory says. You have to justify these results with the economic theory. So does when government improves, so does it decrease the GDP growth? Economic growth decreases. So we have to find and justify our these results with the economic theory. Second is population, and population is showing a positive relationship because its coefficient have positive relationship. So when population increases, GDP or economic growth or GDP growth increases. So again for this we have also find economic theory, and we have to justify our answers, the answer of these results with economic theory. We have to find uh, literature. What does literature said about on these results? What are the actual economics result? What are the actual economic theories? Then we can interpret these results. But as for now we are just want to see that how to apply linear regression model. So basically our interest is to find out the results between these two variables. And the next thing is that uh, R-Sqaure. As you can see that R-Sqaure value is very much low, which is 0.008, which means that 0.08%. So if let's say, basically what does R-Sqaure shows? R-Sqaure shows that how much variation is explained by your variables or your independent variables which we have included in your model. For example, in our case the R-Sqaure value is very much low, but if assume that if its value is, for let's say, if r R-Sqaure is, for example, R-Sqaure is 70. Let's say if this R-Sqaure was 70, so what does it mean? It means that the 70% variation in the GDP growth is because of these independent variable. And what about the rest of 30%? The 30% of variation in the GDP growth is because of those variables which we have not included in our model. That goes to error term. So basically error term shows the effect of those variable which we have not included in our model. So basically here the R-Sqaure is zero point 0.8, so it means 99% variation in GDP growth is because of those variable which we have not included in our model. So it means that this model is totally wrong, or these variable have showing no impact on GDP growth. This thing can also be justified with the probability value, as probability value already tells us that these results are insignificant. So that's why R-Sqaure also shows very less impact of these independent variable on dependent variable. The next thing is probability F-stat. Basically probability F-stat or the F-stat shows the joint significance of independent variable on dependent variable. So here GOV and POPD are showing individual effects on our dependent variable. Here you can see that GOV has its separate coefficient and POPD has also its separate coefficient. So basically they are showing separately individual effect on the dependent variable, which is GDPG. But probability F-stat tell us that joint significance of these variable. Probability F-stat tell us that joint significance of the independent variable on the dependent variable. So what is the null and alternative hypothesis for this? H naught for the probability F-stat is that my independent variables are GOV and POPD. GOV and POPD do not jointly affect GDPG. This is our null hypothesis or H1, and what is alternative hypothesis or H1? That, let me copy all of these things here. So H naught is GOV and POPD, which are my independent variable, do not jointly affect GDPG, and H1 is GOV and POPD do jointly affect GDPG. So what is the guideline for the acceptance or the rejection of null and alternative hypothesis? If the probability value is less than 0.05, we have to reject the null hypothesis. Let me repeat it again. If the probability value is less than 0.05, we have to reject the null hypothesis. But in our case, the probability value is greater than 0.05. That is pretty much higher than 0.05. So we have to accept the null hypothesis, which means that GOV and POPD do not jointly affect GDPG. So we have to accept the null hypothesis. And this is all for the linear regression model results. So this is how you can interpret and run the linear regression model in STATA. So this is the direct method from these steps. So if you want to use a command, so you can use this command regress. Then you have to write your dependent variable first, and then you have to write all of your independent variables. So this will give you the results for your linear regression model.